"You're so hot," he said, his voice trembling like he knew he shouldn't have spoken. The entire ballroom went silent. And for the first time in years, the billionaire CEO's heart skipped, not from fear, not from anger, but from finally feeling seen. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? United States, Canada, Malaysia, UK, Australia, Jamaica. Khalil Trent never planned on saying anything that night. He was too busy counting champagne flutes, barking last-minute instructions to his staff, and trying to keep his shirt from clinging to his back under the ballroom lights. It was supposed to be just another high-end contract, another paycheck to cover rent, school supplies, and the ever-growing list of things his 11-year-old daughter Liana needed. But this wasn't any ordinary event. This was the Vaughn wedding anniversary, hosted in the glass ballroom of the Fairmont, Dallas. 15 years of love between Gareth and Adele Vaughn, the city's most powerful couple. Everyone in Texas oil and corporate finance seemed to be here. Politicians, investors, even a few country music stars pretending to enjoy caviar. And Khalil, the black single dad with a two-person event company and a 5-year-old Toyota van, was just the help. He told himself that didn't matter. He had a job to do, and he did it well. As he moved across the room, adjusting a centerpiece, checking the stage lighting, he caught glimpses of Gareth Vaughn, tall, smug, gold watch gleaming, the kind of man who wore his wealth like armor. And beside him was her. Adele Vaughn. The woman whose face had graced the covers of half a dozen business magazines. Founder and CEO of Vaughn Dynamics, one of the most influential logistics firms in Texas. But in person, she didn't look like the confident mogul from the headlines. She looked tired. Khalil paused near the dessert table, watching her for a second longer than he should have. She stood under the chandelier's golden light, dressed in silver silk, her hair swept into an effortless twist, her diamond necklace catching the glow. But her eyes told a different story, the kind that money couldn't hide. The kind of exhaustion he'd seen before, the one that comes from living in a cage made of expectations. He didn't know what possessed him. Maybe it was exhaustion after a 14-hour setup. Maybe it was the whiskey scent hanging in the air. Maybe it was because, for once, someone like her looked human. But when Adele turned slightly, meeting his eyes just for a heartbeat, the words slipped out. "Ma'am," he swallowed, "you're so hot." It wasn't even loud. But the microphone on stage had gone quiet, the band had taken a pause, and somehow his voice carried just enough. Dozens of heads turned. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking glasses, all died in an instant. Gareth Vaughn's smirk faltered. And Khalil felt the air leave his lungs. "Sir, I'm so sorry," he stammered, lowering his head, gripping the serving tray like a shield. He waited for her outrage, for the "you're fired" or worse, the lawsuit. But instead, Adele Vaughn just stared at him. Her expression unreadable. Then, impossibly, the corners of her mouth twitched. Not in mockery, not in disgust. Almost like she hadn't heard those words in years. "Thank you," she said quietly. It wasn't loud enough for anyone else to hear. But Khalil did. And that soft gratitude, that fragile, trembling sincerity knocked the wind out of him more than any security guard ever could. She turned away gracefully, rejoining her guests as if nothing had happened. But her husband didn't. Gareth's hand tightened around his champagne glass until his knuckles turned white. He shot Khalil a look, a silent promise that this wouldn't be forgotten. And Khalil did what any man with bills, a daughter, and a survival instinct would do. He disappeared into the background. By the time the band picked back up, he was in the service hall, leaning against the wall, trying to calm his racing heart. "Nice going, Trent," muttered one of his assistants. "You just flirted with a billionaire in front of her husband." "Yeah," Khalil exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Guess that's one way to end a career." They laughed it off, but deep down, he knew the laughter was hollow. After the event ended near midnight, Khalil walked out to the parking lot, loosened his tie, and gazed at the Dallas skyline. He thought about his ex-wife, leaving 5 years ago because love doesn't pay the bills. He thought about Liana asleep at Mrs. Thompson's house, waiting for him to pick her up before sunrise. He thought about the way Adele had said thank you. Not with entitlement, not with pity, but like a woman remembering she was alive. Meanwhile, inside the penthouse suite above that same ballroom, Adele Vaughn lay in bed beside her husband. Gareth was asleep already, one arm over the pillow, his phone still in his hand. But she was. Her mind replayed the moment, that small, foolish, unfiltered sentence from a stranger who saw her for a split second, not as a CEO, not as a trophy wife, but as a woman. "You're so hot." She smiled in the dark, quietly, guiltily, and for the first time in years drifted to sleep feeling seen. "I poured my heart into this story because I believe real emotions still matter. My girlfriend laughed and said I'd never even reach 1,000 subscribers. She might be right unless someone like you proves her wrong. Please hit subscribe, not for me alone but for the stories that deserve to be heard." Adele Vaughn didn't sleep much that week. She told herself it was the deadlines, the board meetings, the endless noise of running a billion-dollar logistics empire, but deep down she knew better. It was that man's voice, that sentence. "You're so hot." It wasn't crude or arrogant, it was almost honest. She replayed it in her head as she sipped her morning coffee, staring at the Dallas skyline through her penthouse window. Her husband Gareth sat across from her, scrolling his phone, barely glancing up. "You look tired," he said flatly. "I am," she replied. He didn't ask why. By noon, she was in her office at Vaughn Dynamics, where the walls were glass and her assistant spoke in whispers. She had built this empire from scratch, negotiated, strategized, outworked men twice her size, but somehow one sentence from a stranger had cracked through the armor she'd worn for 15 years. She opened her laptop and typed, "Khalil Trent, Event Planner, Dallas." His company's website was simple, understated, no luxury branding, no buzzwords, just sincerity. She found a photo of him, mid-30s, calm eyes, warm smile. The reviews mentioned his reliability, kindness, and professionalism. And then she saw one testimonial from a widow in Arlington. "Mr. Trent planned my late husband's memorial. He treated my family like his own." Adele exhaled softly. That warmth, that was the thing her life had been missing. Her phone buzzed. It was Gareth. "Gareth, dinner with the mayor's committee at 7. Be ready by 6:45, wear the black dress." She stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Then she typed back, "Adele can't tonight, working late." His reply came instantly. "Gareth, don't test me, Adele." She didn't respond. For the first time in years she didn't care. The next morning she called her assistant, Jenna. "Find the contact info for the planner we used for our anniversary," she said, "Mr. Trent." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" "No," Adele said, "just a potential opportunity." 2 days later, Khalil's phone rang while he was setting up for a wedding at a small vineyard in Grapevine. "Mr. Trent." The voice was crisp, elegant but familiar. "This is Adele Vaughn." He almost dropped his clipboard. "Oh, Mrs. Vaughn, ma'am, is everything all right? I hope the event went well." "It was perfect," she interrupted softly. "Actually, I was wondering if you could come by my office tomorrow. I have a proposal for you." Khalil hesitated, wiping sweat from his forehead. "A proposal?" "Business," she added quickly, "of course." The next day, Khalil wore his cleanest blazer and a pair of shoes polished within an inch of their life. He walked into Vaughn Tower's gleaming lobby, feeling like he didn't belong, the only man of color in a sea of marble floors and designer suits. The receptionist smiled politely. "Mr. Trent, Mrs. Vaughn is expecting you." When the elevator doors opened to her floor, he braced himself. But when Adele greeted him, she wasn't the same woman from the party. She wasn't made of glass and diamond anymore, she looked human. "Mr. Trent," she said with a small smile, "thank you for coming." "Of course, ma'am, always happy to discuss business opportunities." She gestured for him to sit. But for a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, awkward but charged with something unspoken. Then Adele exhaled and said quietly, "You made me remember I'm a woman." Khalil blinked. "Excuse me." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "That night, what you said, it wasn't offensive, it was kind. You said something my husband hasn't said to me in 15 years. Khalil felt his face grow warm. Ma'am, I was just trying to lighten the mood, didn't mean to. I know, she said, cutting him off gently. That's why it meant something. You didn't want anything from me, you didn't even think about it, you just saw me. She paused. Do you know how rare that is in my world? He swallowed hard, probably as rare as people asking if you're okay and meaning it. That made her smile again, the same fragile, unfamiliar smile from the party. They talked for nearly an hour, about work, life, and the strange loneliness that comes with success. Khalil spoke about his daughter Liana, about losing his marriage when his wife left for a man who could give her more. Adele listened quietly, her gaze softening with each word. When he stood to leave, she said, "Would you mind if I kept your number, in case future projects come up?" "Of course," he said, handing her his card, "anytime." That night, Adele sat on her couch in silence, her phone glowing softly in her hand. She typed a message, then deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Finally, she wrote, "Adele, just wanted to say thank you again for coming by, today was refreshing." She hesitated, then hit send. Seconds later, his reply came. "Khalil, anytime, ma'am, and thank you for not firing me the other night." She laughed out loud, really laughed, and her reflection in the window startled her. When was the last time she'd heard that sound? Over the next few weeks, their conversations grew more frequent. Sometimes about business, sometimes about life, sometimes just a simple "how's your day going?" that somehow meant more than it should have. Adele started smiling in meetings, her staff noticed, even her driver noticed. Her wardrobe changed, softer colors, less armor. And Gareth noticed too. One evening he came home late, smelling of whiskey and perfume. "You've been glowing lately," he said, slumping into a chair. "New skincare routine." Adele sipped her wine calmly. "Confidence, Gareth, you should try it sometime." His jaw tightened. "Don't get smart with me." She didn't flinch, then maybe stop mistaking silence for stupidity. He blinked, thrown off by the quiet defiance. Adele stood, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "I'm going to bed," she said, alone. Later that night, Gareth sat in his office, fuming, scrolling through his wife's recent calls. One number kept showing up, unknown contact. He stared at it, eyes narrowing. Who the hell is Khalil Trent? The first real storm in Khalil Trent's life didn't come from the Texas sky. It came from a phone call on a Wednesday morning, the kind that starts polite and ends with your entire world burning down. "Mr. Trent, this is Officer Myers with the Dallas Police Department," the voice said, calm but sharp. "We need you to come in for questioning regarding some financial discrepancies involving Vaughn Dynamics." Khalil froze mid-stride, his coffee sloshing in his hand. "Financial what?" "Sir, you're listed as the recipient of several unauthorized transfers from the company's accounts. We suggest you cooperate." For a moment, all he could hear was the faint hum of his refrigerator and the sound of Liana laughing in the next room, watching cartoons before school. Then reality hit. "Wait, hold on, you think I stole from them?" "Sir," the officer repeated, "please come down voluntarily. It'll be easier for everyone." He hung up, hands shaking. It had to be a mistake. He barely touched a computer at work except for invoices. His business account didn't even have that kind of money. But by the time he drove downtown, the mistake had a badge, a file, and handcuffs. At the station, two detectives sat across from him, dropping a stack of printed transactions on the table. Large sums wired to Trent Events LLC, his company name, his tax ID. He stared at them like they were in a foreign language. "This isn't real," he said quietly. "Someone's setting me up." By evening, the mugshot was taken. And by nightfall, the news had hit local media. "Event planner under investigation for corporate theft, connection to CEO's family alleged." He sat in a holding cell that smelled like sweat and bleach, staring at the gray wall, trying not to picture Liana's face when she found out. Across town, Adele Vaughn was in her office when her assistant burst in with a trembling voice. "Ma'am, they've arrested Mr. Trent." The room spun. "What?" "Something about company funds transferred to his account." Adele's heart pounded. "No," she whispered, "that's impossible." Within an hour, she was on the phone with her legal counsel, demanding records, access, anything. Every logical voice told her to stay quiet, that it was risky to involve herself in a criminal case linked to her company. But logic meant nothing when her gut screamed that Khalil was innocent. That night she couldn't eat. She couldn't even look at Gareth sitting smugly across the dining table swirling his scotch. "You seem upset," he said. She didn't answer. He smirked. "Let me guess, that little planner friend of yours." Her fork froze midair. "What did you say?" "I said," Gareth drawled, "maybe next time you'll choose your company better." Her pulse spiked. Something in his tone, that slight rehearsed satisfaction, made her stomach twist. She forced herself to play along. "And how exactly do you know about him?" "Oh, come on, Adele," Gareth chuckled. "Dallas isn't that big, people talk." But his smirk lingered too long. Too deliberate. The next morning, Adele called Khalil's lawyer, a woman named Denise Holt, sharp, no-nonsense, with a voice that could cut through lies like glass. "I need to help," Adele said, "whatever it takes." Denise sighed. "If you're serious, then prepare for backlash. The press will chew on this." "I don't care," Adele said. "Find me everything linked to those transfers." 3 days later, Denise's team uncovered something strange. The IP address that initiated the wire transfers was Khalil. It was traced to a private server in Addison, one leased under a dummy corporation. Adele's blood ran cold when she saw the registered billing contact. Gareth Vaughn. That evening, she came home to find Gareth on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. She moved quietly, staying just out of sight. "Make sure Trent's account looks guilty," he whispered. "I don't care how you do it, just make it stick. The idiot never should have opened his mouth around my wife." Her chest tightened. The phone slipped slightly in his hand, enough for her to hear the voice on the other end. A man laughing. "Don't worry, Mr. Vaughn, the charges will bury him." Adele stepped back, trembling. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to rip the mask off the monster she'd been married to. But she didn't, not yet. She knew if she wanted to free Khalil, she needed proof. So she called Denise. "I have your confirmation," she said, voice shaking. "Now I need your hacker." 2 nights later, she sat in a dim office across from a young tech specialist named Owen, who looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in months. "Can you tap his phone?" she asked. He smirked. "Ma'am, in Texas we don't tap, we monitor." Within hours, Owen pulled encrypted messages, wire logs, even payment receipts showing Gareth transferring money to the fraudsters. It was all there, the digital fingerprints of betrayal. By morning, federal agents stormed Gareth Vaughn's office. The same news outlets that ran Khalil's arrest were now plastered with Gareth's photo, captioned, "CEO's husband charged in corporate sabotage and fraud conspiracy." Adele watched from her office window as the man who'd controlled her life for 15 years was led away in handcuffs. And for the first time in her adult life, she felt something like peace. 2 hours later, Khalil walked out of Dallas County Detention Center. The sunlight hit his face like a baptism. Adele was waiting by her car, sunglasses hiding her red eyes. When he saw her, he stopped. "You did this?" he asked quietly. She nodded once. "We did it." They stood there in silence, two people from opposite worlds, both scarred, both somehow still standing. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I should have protected you sooner." "You did," he replied, "just not in the way you think." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You believed me," Khalil said softly. "That was enough." He turned toward the city skyline, breathing deep. Dallas felt different now, heavier but freer. "Now what?" Adele asked. Khalil smiled faintly. "Now, I pick up my daughter, cook dinner, and try to remember what normal feels like." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Then maybe let me help you with that someday." And just like that, in the middle of a Dallas parking lot, the chaos started to settle into something that felt a lot like hope. That night, the story hit the local evening news again. Single father cleared of all charges after CEO's husband exposed in fraud scheme. Liana watched it from the couch, beaming. "Daddy's famous," she whispered. Khalil laughed, tears burning behind his smile. "Not famous, baby," he said, "just free." And if you made it this far, if your heart beat faster when Khalil walked out of that cell or when Adele finally stood up to her demons, then maybe, just maybe, you believe in second chances too. Because stories like this deserve to be told, not forgotten. So don't just scroll away. Click the subscribe button, stay for the next story. Because the next heartbeat, the next redemption, the next miracle might just be yours. The news hit Dallas like a thunderclap. By sunrise, every local station, blog, and talk show was buzzing with the same headline. Gareth Vaughn arrested for orchestrating corporate sabotage scheme, wife exposes fraud. Reporters camped outside Vaughn Tower. Paparazzi crowded the gates of the Vaughn estate, hoping for a glimpse of the now infamous husband. And in the middle of it all, Adele Vaughn walked into her company's headquarters with her chin lifted, her face calm, and her wedding ring gone. She didn't flinch when she saw the cameras. She didn't blink when reporters shouted questions about betrayal, scandal, and marriage. All she said into a dozen microphones was, "Truth isn't a scandal, it's a release." Then she walked inside, straight to the boardroom. The board members were waiting, 14 men and women who'd once worshipped Gareth's social charm and whispered about Adele's coldness. She could feel their discomfort thick in the air. "Mrs. Vaughn," one of them began carefully, "we're concerned about public perception." "Public perception?" Adele interrupted, voice calm but sharp. "A man was nearly destroyed because of a lie that began in this very circle. You should be concerned about that." She slid a folder onto the table, proof of the forged documents, the false transfers, the digital footprints. "Mr. Trent's name is cleared," she continued. "Effective immediately, I'm reinstating his contract and compensating him for the damages caused by this company's negligence." The CFO cleared his throat. "Adele, this could look." "It will look," she cut in, "like a woman finally doing what's right." And that was that. By afternoon, her lawyers filed for divorce. The same day, Khalil received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, Adele's voice came through softly, almost uncertainly. "Hi," she said, "I thought maybe you'd like to know it's over." He smiled faintly, sitting on his porch, his daughter's laughter echoing from inside. "Over. The marriage, the lies, the noise." He leaned back, staring at the late Texas sun dipping low behind the rooftops. "Good," he said gently, "you deserve peace." 2 weeks later, she showed up at his door. No chauffeur, no designer suit, just jeans, a simple blouse, and a nervous smile that made her look younger. "I hope this isn't weird," she said, standing on his porch. "I just wanted to thank you properly." Khalil stepped aside. "You can come in." Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and laundry detergent. Family photos lined the hallway, pictures of Liana at the park, her gap-toothed grin lighting up every frame. Adele paused in front of one photo, her eyes soft. "She looks happy," she murmured. "She is," Khalil replied. "She's tougher than I'll ever be." He motioned to the couch. "Sit, please." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The silence wasn't heavy, it was healing. Adele finally spoke. "You know, when you said that to me at the anniversary, I thought it was a joke, a stupid, fleeting comment." Khalil smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, I remember, I thought I'd ruined my whole business that night." She laughed softly. "You didn't ruin anything, you woke something up." He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "You ever think about how people can see the same thing completely differently?" "What do you mean?" "You saw my words as something bold, I saw them as a mistake, but maybe both of us needed that moment to happen exactly the way it did." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "Maybe so." Then Liana came bounding into the room, clutching a stuffed panda. "Daddy, is she your friend?" Khalil chuckled. "Yeah, sweetheart, this is Mrs. Adele." Adele smiled, crouching to meet her eyes. "Hi Liana, I've heard so much about you." The little girl tilted her head. "You're pretty, you look like the lady in those fancy magazines." Adele laughed. "Well, I used to be her, now I'm just trying to be me." They had dinner together that night, spaghetti and garlic bread, eaten off mismatched plates, laughter filling the room like music. Adele hadn't laughed like that in years. For the first time, no one measured her worth by a balance sheet or a headline. Just two humans eating dinner in a small house trying to breathe again. Over the next few months, life shifted in small, steady ways. Adele spent more time at community events, quietly donating to programs for single parents. Khalil's business grew faster than ever. After news spread of how the CEO herself had cleared his name, his phone never stopped ringing. Every new client, every handshake felt like redemption. But there were still scars. Nights Khalil would sit awake, wondering if it was safe to trust again. And nights Adele would wake from dreams of shouting, betrayal, and cold marble floors. They didn't fix each other, they simply learned to sit in the quiet together. One Sunday afternoon, Adele invited Khalil to a company gala, her first public appearance since the divorce. He hesitated. "You sure about that? People talk." "Let them," she said, "they've been talking my whole life." That night when they entered the ballroom side by side, whispers rippled through the crowd. But Adele didn't care. She introduced him confidently. "This is Khalil Trent, the finest event planner in Texas." Her voice didn't waver. During the dinner, as the band played slow jazz, she leaned closer and said quietly, "You know what's funny? When you said you're so hot, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen that night." Khalil smirked. "And now?" She met his eyes. "Now I think it might have been fate with bad timing." Later that night, as he walked her to her car, the Dallas skyline shimmered against the glass of the tower. She turned to him, her expression softer than he'd ever seen. "I used to think love meant power," she said quietly, "control, image, winning." He shook his head. "Now love's the opposite, it's surrender." She smiled, looking up at him. "Then maybe I'm finally ready to surrender." He wanted to say something, something profound, something that matched the weight of her words. But before he could, she leaned in and kissed his cheek, quick, almost shy. "Good night, Khalil." And as she walked away, he realized that every struggle, every sleepless night, every heartbreak had led to this, a moment of quiet grace in the middle of Dallas, where a broken woman and a weary man had found peace in each other's presence. In the weeks that followed, their bond deepened, not through grand gestures but through the little things. Morning texts, shared lunches, helping Liana with her homework. And slowly, the noise of the world faded. All that was left was something real. Something worth fighting for. Spring came early that year in Dallas. The air smelled of honeysuckle and wet grass, the kind of weather that made people believe in second chances. Khalil Trent woke up before sunrise, brewed coffee, and stood by the window watching his daughter, Liana, still asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket with her math homework scattered across the floor. It had been 6 months since the chaos, 6 months since the scandal, the trial, and the storm that had nearly swallowed his life whole. But somehow, the dust had settled into something beautiful. His phone buzzed, a message. "Adele, breakfast at 9, I'm craving pancakes." He chuckled, replying, "Khalil, you only like them because I shape them into hearts." "Adele, maybe, or maybe I just like the cook." He smiled, shaking his head. Even through text, she had a way of making the world feel lighter. By 9 o'clock, she was at his door, no bodyguards, no chauffeurs, just Adele in a sundress, her hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the woman who once commanded boardrooms. Now she looked like someone who'd finally remembered how to breathe. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied, holding up a spatula. "Hope you like your pancakes slightly lopsided." "They're my favorite kind," she said, smiling. They ate together while Liana chattered about school, summer plans, and a stray dog she wanted to adopt. Khalil watched Adele listening, really listening, her laughter blending with Liana's like music. He hadn't realized how much he needed that sound until it became part of his mornings. After breakfast, they went for a walk in the small park near his neighborhood, the same one where Khalil often took Liana on weekends. The pond shimmered under the sun, and ducks glided across the water lazily. Adele stood near the bench, looking at the families around them, couples holding hands, kids tossing bread to ducks. "This," she said softly, "feels more like wealth than anything I've ever owned." Khalil smiled. "That's because it is." They sat on the bench together. For a long while, neither spoke. The world felt quiet in a good way, like silence wasn't an absence but a presence. Then Adele reached into her bag and handed him an envelope. "What's this?" "Your new contracts," she said. 3 corporate galas and a charity event. You're officially booked solid for the next 6 months." Khalil blinked. "Adele, that's—" "Don't thank me," she interrupted. "You earned this. You didn't just survive that storm, you came out of it standing taller." He opened the envelope, staring at the numbers. This wasn't charity, it was a future. For him, for Liana. He looked up, his throat tight. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, she said quietly. You remind me of what it means to start again. I forgot how to do that until you. A soft breeze swept through the park, carrying the smell of spring and the sound of children laughing. Khalil stood slowly, turning to her. There's something I've been meaning to say, he began. Something that's been sitting on my chest since that night at the anniversary. Adele tilted her head. You mean the night you risked your entire career just to tell a married CEO she was hot? He chuckled. Yeah, that one. He reached into his jacket pocket, his hands trembling slightly. When he pulled out the small velvet box, her breath caught. He opened it, simple, elegant, a silver band with a modest diamond that shimmered like morning sunlight. The first time I said it I was joking, he said softly. The second time I meant it. Her eyes filled instantly, her voice breaking. Khalil. He smiled faintly. You're still so hot, Adele, but now when I say it I mean every word. You're strong, you're kind, you're beautiful, not because of what you own but because of what you survived. For a heartbeat the world went quiet again. Then Adele nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Liana, hiding behind a tree with wide eyes, squealed. Daddy, she said yes. They both burst into laughter, and Adele pulled Liana into her arms. For a moment, everything, the pain, the fear, the loneliness, dissolved into sunlight and laughter. A few weeks later, the news broke again, but this time, the headline told a different story. CEO marries event planner who once changed her life with a compliment. People called it poetic, scandalous, romantic, but to them, it was just life rebuilt from the ashes. Khalil's company, Trent Signature Events, became one of the most sought-after planners in Texas. Not because of fame, but because clients saw how he treated people. Every event felt personal, every detail mattered. Adele helped quietly behind the scenes, connecting him with clients, never taking credit. Together, they built something that wasn't just business, it was legacy. One evening, months after their small backyard wedding, Khalil stood on their porch, watching the sunset with Adele's head resting on his shoulder. You ever think about how wild this all was? He asked. Every day, she said with a smile. You know, you ruined my sleep schedule for months. He laughed. Worth it. Then he turned serious. You ever regret it, walking away from all that power, all that status? She looked up at him. No, I finally realized the only thing worth having power over is peace. He kissed her forehead, whispering, You're still so hot. She laughed through her tears. And you still don't know how to whisper quietly. From inside the house, Liana called out, Gross, Dad, stop being weird. They both laughed harder, the kind of laughter that only comes from people who have fought too hard not to. Later that night, when the lights were out and the world was still, Khalil lay awake for a moment, listening to the soft rhythm of Adele's breathing beside him. He thought about the first time he'd seen her, untouchable, unreachable, and broken inside. He thought about how one careless sentence had changed everything. And he smiled. Because sometimes the universe doesn't need perfect timing. It just needs one imperfect man to say the right thing at the wrong moment. Sometimes it's the smallest words that heal the biggest wounds. A single moment of truth spoken without agenda can rewrite years of silence. Khalil didn't have money, power, or status, but he had honesty, and in a world that trades affection for advantage, that honesty became his redemption and hers. So maybe we all need to remember that love doesn't always arrive dressed in perfection. Sometimes it shows up late, tired, and holding a tray of champagne, whispering words you never expected to hear. And if this story made you pause, if it reminded you that kindness can change a life, that love can start from a single sentence, then don't just click away. Because stories like this live longer when someone believes in them. Subscribe to the channel. Not for me, but for the next Khalil, the next Adele, the next soul who needs to hear that they're still worth loving.